What drives human beings to carve eternity into stone? In the heart of the Egyptian desert, where the sun burns with a nearly divine intensity and the sands seem to whisper forgotten stories, one of the most enigmatic structures in human history still stands: the Great Pyramid of Giza. Towering over 140 meters high, this stone colossus has loomed over the landscape for more than 4,500 years. Once thought to be the eternal resting place of Pharaoh Khufu, it is far more than a tomb. It is a declaration of power, faith, and architectural genius. To walk its narrow corridors and ascend its central gallery is not just a physical experience. It's a journey through time. Every block of stone seems to carry a fragment of a civilization that rose, quite literally, from the dust to challenge eternity itself. The ancient Egyptians didn't merely build for life, they built for forever. But to truly understand the greatness of ancient Egypt, we must go far beyond the pyramids. What we see today is only the surface. This civilization was the product of thousands of years of evolution, shaped by adaptation, innovation, and an unrelenting pursuit of cosmic order. Our story doesn't begin in a famous temple or royal tomb. It begins in a forgotten cliffside about 100 kilometers south of Luxor, a place called Qurta, hidden among rock and sand, where something extraordinary was discovered. Rock carvings dating back over 19,000 years. These are not mere markings. They are silent messages carved by people who lived tens of thousands of years before the pyramids ever rose. There are hippos, wild cattle, and massive oryx charging through the stone, creatures that once dominated a landscape now long gone. What is now desert was once savanna, lush and green. These carvings tell us of a nomadic people intimately connected to the wild world around them. Some scholars believe the images were part of a ritual, a kind of hunting magic meant to influence success in the chase. Others see the first spark of spirituality, an early link between humans and the animal world that would later evolve into the zoomorphic gods of Egypt. Around 10,000 years ago, a slight but crucial tilt in Earth's axis triggered climate change on a global scale. The life-giving seasonal rains began to disappear. Deserts advanced, and those early nomads were forced to follow the last remaining sources of water. One of those places was Nabta Playa. Here, survival depended on understanding the skies. These ancient people constructed a stone circle aligned with the stars, the oldest known astronomical observatory in Egypt. It's over 7,000 years old. When the sun reached its zenith and cast no shadow, it signaled the coming of the vital rains. The stars became a calendar, and this cosmic timing allowed them to prepare for the survival of the entire community. But this was more than a weather forecast. It was the beginning of a world view where heaven and earth were connected, where celestial order governed earthly life. From this moment on, every tomb, temple, and sacred structure in Egypt would be aligned with the sky, the stars, and the gods. Among the earliest symbols of that divine order was a mysterious sculpture, a simple piece of sandstone believed to represent a cow. It dates back to 5000 BCE and may be the earliest representation of Hathor, the cow goddess. To these people, the cow was more than nourishment. It was life itself, and it was sacred. Hathor would eventually become one of the most beloved deities in Egypt, representing love, joy, beauty, and motherhood. And she was only the beginning. The Egyptians created a vast pantheon of gods and goddesses, hundreds, perhaps thousands, each governing a different aspect of life. Some had human forms, others the heads of animals. Some were male, female, or neither. The ram was worshipped for fertility, the lion for strength, the crocodile for danger. But the gods weren't just to be adored. They were to be placated, controlled, even feared. Sekhmet, for instance, was a lion-headed goddess of destruction. By worshipping her, Egyptians believed they could tame her rage and transform her into a more peaceful force. Religion became the glue that held Egypt together, not just spiritually, but socially and politically. But all of it, the gods, the temples, the tombs, depended on a force even greater: the Nile. Ancient Greek historians called Egypt the gift of the Nile, and they were right. In a land of endless desert, this river was life itself. Each year it flooded its banks, spreading fertile silt across the land, renewing the soil and allowing agriculture to thrive. The annual flood wasn't just an agricultural event, it was a sacred cycle, death and rebirth, reenacted each year by the river itself. At the southernmost point of modern-day Egypt, where the Blue Nile and the White Nile converge, this sacred river is born. For most of the year, the White Nile flows gently, but in the rainy season, the Blue Nile swells, releasing torrents of water that once flooded the entire Nile Valley. Those floods brought not only water, but nutrients. Crops like barley, wheat, garlic, and even cotton grew in abundance. The people knew how to work with the land. Fields were planted, harvested, and allowed to rest, sometimes for only a month before they became fertile again. This delicate harmony between human and environment was Egypt's greatest natural advantage. And as the desert expanded, people migrated in greater numbers to the Nile, clustering into what became the two lands, Upper and Lower Egypt. One of the earliest known settlements was at El Kab. It lacks the grandeur of the pyramids, but in its soil are the secrets of Egypt's transformation, from nomads to farmers to administrators. Layer by layer, archaeologists have uncovered remnants of food preparation, household tools, pottery fragments, hearths and silos, the humble evidence of daily life. These people didn't just survive. They began to store food, produce surplus, and, crucially, divide labor. From this came bureaucracy, order, and hierarchy. But Egypt was never content with just surviving. It was obsessed with the afterlife. In early tombs dating back over 5,000 years, bodies were buried in fetal position, surrounded by pottery, tools, jewelry, and cosmetics, everything needed for the next life. To the Egyptians, death was not an end, but a transition. A preserved body was essential. It served as the eternal home of the soul. Without it, one's essence would be lost. Natural mummification by the desert sand eventually evolved into a sacred science. Organs were removed, bodies dehydrated with natron, wrapped in linen, and anointed with resin. The heart was left intact. It would be weighed in the afterlife against the feather of Ma'at, the divine principle of truth and balance. Only the righteous could pass into eternity. The earliest royal tombs discovered at Abydos give us a glimpse into the brutal power of the earliest kings. In one, that of Pharaoh Jer, over 500 individuals were buried alongside the ruler, many likely sacrificed. It was a staggering display of absolute control. If the king ruled in life, he would rule in death, surrounded by courtiers and servants for eternity. Eventually, this practice was replaced by symbolic offerings and statuary. But the idea remained. The king was not merely mortal, he was divine. and then came Narmer. Around 3100 BCE, the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt was symbolized by the Narmer palette, a ceremonial stone tablet depicting the king wearing both crowns of North and South, striking down his enemies in the iconic smiting pose. With this act, Egypt became the world's first unified nation-state. From Narmer onward, pharaohs became both rulers and gods. Their names were inscribed on temple walls, passed down through king lists like the one found in the temple of Seti Thewar at Abydos, a scroll of history carved into stone. This was not just a timeline. It was a divine lineage, a promise of cosmic continuity. And from that promise rose one of the most extraordinary monuments ever conceived, the pyramid. Pharaoh Djoser, advised by his brilliant architect Imhotep, abandoned traditional tombs and ordered something radical, a step pyramid built entirely of stone. It was a staircase to the heavens. It redefined death, not as a descent, but as an ascension. Other kings followed, experimenting with shape and scale. But it was Khufu, son of Sneferu, who ordered the construction of the Great Pyramid at Giza. It took over 20 years to build. More than 2 million stone blocks were used. For this monumental project, a city was created, complete with workers' housing, bakeries, medical care, and logistics that rival any modern infrastructure. These workers weren't slaves. They were well-fed, organized, and respected laborers, part of a massive state-sponsored effort. The pyramid wasn't just a tomb, it was a spiritual machine, a cosmic temple encoded in geometry and symbolism, built to launch the soul of the king into the stars. Inside, the king's chamber is stark, silent, and built of immense granite blocks. No gold, no hieroglyphs, just stone and presence. It is as if the monument itself was the final offering. As time passed, the Egyptians shifted their burial strategy. Instead of towering pyramids, they built hidden tombs in the Valley of the Kings. Their art became more mystical, filled with spells and symbols to guide the dead through the perils of the afterlife. The gods remained ever-present, but devotion became more personal. Amun rose as supreme deity, merging with Ra to become Amun-Ra, Lord of Creation. His temple at Karnak grew into one of the largest sacred sites in the world. But even the greatest powers fade. Egypt fell under foreign rule, first by Libyans, then Assyrians, Persians, and finally, the Greeks. Alexander the Great was proclaimed a pharaoh. The Ptolemies built temples in Egyptian style, even as they ruled in Greek. Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh, would die under Roman domination, and Egypt would become a province of empire. Christianity came, and then Islam. The temples fell silent, the gods forgotten, the hieroglyphs unreadable. And yet, Egypt never truly died. Its mysteries endured, in legend, in alchemy, in dreams. And when the Rosetta Stone was deciphered in 1822, the voices of the ancients returned. Pharaohs spoke again. Priests chanted. A civilization buried by time rose once more. The pyramids still stand, not just as monuments of stone, but as monuments of meaning, proof that humanity once reached beyond death and dared to sculpt forever. If this journey into the heart of ancient Egypt has captivated you, don't forget to subscribe to Shadows and Secrets. Leave a like and explore the other mysteries waiting to be uncovered. That said, thank you and see you next time.